well. It's
Okay, we're now live on
I think
YouTube.
we're live. So yes. Okay. Well then. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the March 27th Project Advocacy Committee meeting, Catalyze SV. Uh, Tonight, we're also joined by some special guests, Fremont for Everyone, since the project we're looking at is the Osgood Road project by Mid-Penn Housing. Their project's over in Fremont, so we wanted to partner with some folks over there. And I think Lisa is here, or anyone who wants to take the go ahead and just introduce what Fremont for Everyone is.
Sure. Fremont for Everyone is our local pro housing and pro solutions to homelessness organization here in Fremont. We formed in 2019 while fighting together for the Housing Navigation Center, which is operational and successful. So we're happy for that win, and we continue to push for housing solutions in Fremont. And I want to give a shout out and a thank you to all the Fremont for Everyone people I see here on the line. So thank you for joining.
Yeah, thank you for being here. It's gonna be good to have a lot of local Fremont energy in here on this project. And then, so that leads us into our introductions, I guess, and I'll introduce myself. I'm Jake Wild. I'm the manager of development projects here at Catalyze SV. Working with the project advocacy committee is sort of my thing, and I'll be leading us through this tonight. Uh, we're joined by Alex, who is managing the live streaming of our show tonight.
Hey
And
everyone, I'm Alex. I'm one of the co-founders of Catalyze SV and its executive director, and I'm thrilled to be back with Fremont for Everyone members and can't wait to offer some good feedback to our wonderful developers here today.
and then let's pass this on to the rest of you all. If you just want to introduce yourself, say a little bit about why you're here. Anyone, feel free to speak up and take it first.
Okay, hi, I'm Sandana. I'm a project advocacy member and a community engagement ambassador at Catalyze SV. I'm very passionate about geography and urban planning. I'm currently a senior at Lynbrook High School, and I'll be attending San Jose State next year for a majoring in geography and urban studies.
Very cool. San Jose State's great.
I'm Carlin Black, and I am retired urban planner. Of course, urban planners never retire; they just wear a lot. And been with Catalyze SV since the beginning.
Good to have you here, Carlin.
Yeah, I'm Chris. I'm an interdisciplinary student at San Jose State. I've taken a lot of urban planning courses, and by far that's the area of study that's been the most captivating to me, and looking to get some sort of employment in housing, affordable housing, or kind of the politics of housing and the city, those intersections. A lot of work to be done for sure. And yeah, I just came across this event. Well, I mean, I came across SV Catalyst as looking for places to look for such positions, particularly internships. Came across, yeah, and I came across Jake on that, just going through the staff and the faculty at the organization, and we're like, oh yes, got to reach out.
Well,
Because
good
yeah,
to
I
have
know
you here
Jake from a
too
lot of my
tonight,
classes.
Chris. Yeah. Uh, who wants to speak up next? We can go through this.
I can go. Hi, I'm Lisa. You heard from me a minute ago. I'm on the elected leadership team of Fremont for Everyone, and I've been with Fremont for Everyone pretty much since the beginning.
It's great to have you here again, Lisa, and everyone else from Fremont for Everyone.
I'm Marilyn. I'm Fremont for Everyone, off and on since the very beginning as well.
Hi, my name's Sandra. I'm here in Fremont. I'm a member of Fremont for Everyone since 2019 in the beginning and continue to be part of the policy committee and I'm very interested in what the Osgood Road presentation has to say and taking that and dissecting what we need to here in Fremont.
Hi, I'm Catherine Ruby. I'm with Fremont for Everyone. I have been an official member and leader for the last 3 years and was temporarily joined them during the housing navigation um, uh, meeting with City Council the night that they were voting on that. And apparently they kept tabs on me because they came back and wanted me to come back. So I'm happy to be a part of Fremont for Everyone. I have enjoyed working on several issues and it gives me life and energy to do this work.
We're really glad to have you, Catherine.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. This is Vinita. I served as Fremont for Everyone leadership team till last year, and I continue to engage with Fremont for Everyone. I had been involved with Fremont for Everyone ever since we began. So glad to be here.
Any other folks want to say their piece? Catherine?
Hi, I'm Catherine Hedges, as well as being a member of Surge. I've been with Catalyze SV since I think, 2019 or so. I'm interested in affordable housing and disability rights.
Great to have you back, Catherine.
Thanks.
I'll go next. Hi, my name is Ryan Rubin, been a member of Catalyze SV since around 2017. Received my Master's of Urban Planning at San Jose State. I am working in affordable housing development now. And also a Fremont resident. I haven't heard of Fremont for Everyone. I need to contact Lisa after this call. Thank you.
Yeah. Is that everyone? Is gone? Do we have names in here? Casey, if Casey's here, the note taker app. Or all right then. Well then, how about we have our developer that's with us here tonight, Midpen Housing, start with introducing who they are and talk a little bit about what their project is that they're going to be showing us tonight. Actually, if I hand it off over to you to screen share if you want to bring up the presentation.
Yes, I'll bring up my presentation. Hold on one second as we work on the technical piece.
Victoria, while you're setting that up, Jake, any setting the stage you want to do for folks tonight on the process?
I probably should introduce the process a little bit now that everyone's here and explain it again. Yes. So what we do here at the with the project advocacy committee at our monthly meetings is we have a developer come in like Midpen has tonight, and they're gonna tell us a little bit about their project, and then we're gonna look at that through the lens of these values that Catalyze SV has sort of laid out, and ask questions, provide feedback, and sort of hopefully shape kind of the project that we're looking at here and provide some valuable input. And then after that, we will go into a sort of closed session where we're then going to discuss more in depth our thoughts on the project and sort of draft up some feedback. And then with that in mind, it might just be my sound, or maybe it's let's pass it off to Midpen and see if there's still
Okay,
sound issue.
can you hear me?
I can hear you, Victoria.
And you can see my screen, everyone? Okay, perfect. I will get started. Thank you so much for Catalyze SB and Fremont for everyone for your interest in our Osgood Road development. I'm Victoria Wong, Senior Project Manager with Midpen Housing. And I also want to introduce with you two of my colleagues here today on the Osgood Road team, Ethan Levin, Project Manager, and Polo Munoz, Director of Housing Development. I'll share a short presentation about the project and then we can answer any questions. First, I want to share a little bit about Midpen. Midpen is a regional nonprofit developer and owner-operator of affordable housing for low-income households in the Greater Bay Area, having developed or rehabbed over 9,000 homes since our inception in 1970. We are long-term stewards of the communities we build, providing property management and resident services at our communities. We value being good neighbors and providing our residents with intentional support. We are also owners of other Fremont communities, including most recently Stevenson Terrace, which completed construction in 2019. This is an overview of our site, which is currently 2 parcels. We heard that the city would like us to maximize the homes we're providing here, and we're currently evaluating a plan for approximately 229 new apartments. Maximizing density has been a goal on this site. Our site is currently improved with a single-family house and commercial building. In order to develop the new homes, we plan on demolishing the current structures on both sites. Due to the size of our development and the financing for affordable housing, we will need to build these new apartments in 2 phases in order to maximize the number of new apartments we can build. Here's a visual of our preliminary design. Our vision is that the building will fit into the context of Osgood Road. We are developing these homes for low-income families, so there will be 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments with parking on the first 2 levels. On-site amenities will include a community room, property management and services offices, outdoor play and gathering areas, laundry rooms, and after-school learning centers. As part of our services programming at family sites, we have after-school program and also provide various adult education classes, which will be free for our residents. We have sustainability features, including having an all-electric building, solar panels on the roof, drought-resistant landscaping, and also we'll be pursuing either a Green Point or LEED rating. Our goals for this site is to provide affordable homes for individuals and families earning 30 to 60% of area median income, with an average of 50% of area median income. We will be providing homes for working class families in Fremont and expect to have a live-work preference for a portion of the apartments. We are about a third of a mile walk from the future Irvington BART station and look forward to maximizing the use and benefit of this amenities-rich site. Here's an overview of our community outreach timeline. We anticipate both phases to be entitled together this year in 2024, and then our first phase will continue on with design and financing in 2024 and 2025. The earliest possible construction start is 2026 for the first phase and completion in 2028. And then our second phase will likely be a year after that. I also want to share a little bit about Midpen's community outreach process. Midpen collaborates with the community through outreach meetings to inform our design. So prior to submitting any design to the city, we did have a series of outreach meetings. For our Osgood Road development, we had both one-on-one stakeholder outreach meetings as well as community outreach meetings open to the public in 2023. We wanted to give folks the options and opportunity, so we held both in-person meeting and a Zoom meeting for feedback. Overall, we've heard positive support for the project. This concludes my presentation. Thank you, everyone, and please let us know what questions you have for our Osgood Road Family Housing Development.
Thanks, Victoria. And if I may jump in just a little bit, just to add a little bit more, thank you so much for the presentation. Again, my name is Paula Munoz. I'm a Director of Housing Development with MidPenn. And can everyone hear me okay? Does this sound fine?
Yeah, we can hear you all right.
Yeah, first and foremost, thank you so much for having us here. We love to present the project. We'd love to engage with housing and urban planning advocates. It's a pleasure to be here. And I think back of my trajectory at MidPenn. I've been with MidPenn Housing for 14 years, starting as an associate project manager. And over the years, I've had a chance to engage with many communities, many groups, many cities, and work on different projects. Maybe closest to Fremont, the Union City Station Center next to BARD. If any of you ever are taking BARD and see the big mural next to Station Center, that's a MidPenn project that happened in multiple phases. But it's like Victoria was saying, MidPenn is extremely committed to the delivery of affordable housing. We here, Ethan, Victoria, myself, are in the development side. We really are in the upfront portion of development. But again, I would like to emphasize that MidPenn, for those of you that maybe are not as familiar, is very committed to property management and resident services as well. It's more than putting a roof over our residents' head, but also making sure that wraparound services are provided to our populations, and good quality property management is provided. We're going to own these properties in perpetuity, and we not only going to be good stewards of the properties, but be good neighbors and maintain this property as well. With that said, a couple of things that I wanted to add to the presentation. We've been involved on this side for the last 2 years, engaging with the city of Fremont, who's been a partner here and helping with some of the funding to acquire the site. Our intent here is to maximize the use of the site. As Victoria presented, there's roughly 200 plus units that have been divided into 2 phases. Part of the reason for facing the project, making it 2 separate, 2 adjoining but separate buildings, is that our financing structure is limited. The pools of financing really make projects feasible when you're hitting more about 100, 120 size project. That's why we've had to do this, or intend to do this, in 2 phases. Although once fully built, the development will interact with the community as a single building. It will be managed by MidPenn, so it'll appear to be a single property, but will likely be built in 2 sequential phases. So with that said, we can discuss a little bit more about the financing if people have questions, but I wanted to give a little bit more context on us, MidPenn, and also the approach for the density that we're doing here at Osgood Road.
Thank you for that. And we actually did have a question. If you could just briefly discuss the financing plan for the project. One of our members was interested, Ryan.
Yeah, and I'll let Victoria kind of dive into it a little bit further into detail. What I'll start is that at this stage, as we are moving through pre-development and still through entitlements, it's very preliminary what we're doing. There already is, and there likely will be additional city funding sources to support these projects. But as we know, funding is limited at the regional and state level, and sometimes those funding sources evolved over the years. Right now, there might be some assumptions that Victoria can maybe speak to. There will definitely likely be applications to the state housing, to HCD, which is the State Department that facilitates different funding pots. for affordable housing, as well as eventually tax credits that will generate some, essentially that tends to be our last piece of financing once we've secured local, city, perhaps county and state funds. We eventually are positioned in a good place to compete for state credits, which is our final piece. But Victoria, maybe you can speak a little bit more about our preliminary structure there.
Yeah, I think you touched on a lot of potential sources. We do have City of Fremont funding committed currently that paid for the acquisition and some pre-development costs for the development. We are anticipating if there are potential project-based vouchers that the Housing Authority of the County of Alameda are providing are offering an RFP for, we may apply for that. We will also be likely applying for state financing with HCD, and then additional city funding. And then there is also the possibility, I know there's the potential for the BAFA regional bond. If there is regional bond funding that becomes available in the future, that is another potential source for this project. And then finally, we for construction would be getting a conventional construction loan. And then for tax credits, that's the last piece that we would have an investor for to provide equity through the tax credit program that's run through the California Tax Credit Allocation Committee.
And one additional thing I would add, again, this is preliminary, but as I heard earlier, as people were presenting, that there is sort of an emphasis to address and acknowledge that the need for supportive housing to house formerly homeless individuals and families. And it seems like this group has done great work in that effect. A lot of the state funding to be at all competitive at this stage does require a certain set aside. Right now, we've been contemplating these communities as family projects with likely 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. Again, like Victoria said, serving the 30 to 60% area median income. But as the project moves further, we go through entitlements, we start refining or sharpening our pencils. It's likely that as we look at these state funding sources, that we would be looking at potentially some set-asides to also address the diverse need for the community, which could include a set-aside for supportive housing.
Yeah, thank you for explaining all of that about the project and its current trajectory with funding and that sort of stuff. If I could cover some of our Catalyze SV sort of values here. You talked a good bit about community during your presentation and what groups you've could you talk more about what groups you've met with, neighborhood associations, community groups, stuff like that?
Yeah, off the top of my head, we did meet with some city council members, the Chamber of Commerce members, Business Association. The invites to the community meeting were also mailed direct to our direct neighbors too in the area. So they were all invited.
Yeah, and that's what was the primarily approach to work with the city who essentially advises that to take that approach and essentially mail out those invites for those early meetings. And some of the information we're covering here is similar to what was covered at those meetings.
Okay, thank you for that. And then our next sort of value is vibrancy of the project here. So sort of what does the project do to bring a sort of life to the public facing realm or along the project around it?
Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with Osgood Road right now, but it is fairly commercial. There are more residential buildings that are being built. So I imagine that by redeveloping our Osgood site with a residential building, we'll be creating a more inviting and walkable corridor on Osgood Road. The private community serving spaces for our residents will also allow our future residents to have connection, growth, and form relationships with each other, whether it's spending time at the podium level, community spaces, or the green walking paths around the building.
Okay, so you mentioned the walking paths around the building there. It's integrated into like the sort of adjacent.
Yeah, let me share my screen, the site plan, so you can get a visual.
Yeah, thank you. If you want to go ahead and leave it up.
Yeah, let me work on my technology. Right here. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
So the main entry to phase one is along Osgood Road. We imagine there's going to be a path and greenery. We're calling it the proposed paseo and also emergency vehicle access for fire. But there will be pedestrian walkway to the second phase entry. This is what it's going to look like. This is the rendering. So that our families will be able to have a sense of community and private space within the Osgood Road development.
And one thing I'll mention in terms of on-site amenities, we're intentional, we're thoughtful about the ability to provide some open space for our residents on site to have internal courtyards. Sort of an approach you see here is where it's a 6-story building with the first 2 stories being concrete type 1 like structures, which will house the garage and some wrapped around units. And some of that sort of office and property management space. As you go above to the 3rd level through the 6th level, maybe you kind of see it here, but there is a podium with some open space. We understand for residents that is critical, with cost containment and desires to be as streamlined as possible. We limit potentially the use of balconies, for example, but instead focus on creating this communal space. What you see also within the courtyard is some community rooms that are used for events for the residents themselves, but can also at times be open to broader community meetings to the broader public as our resident services might engage with other groups in the area. I know I've been part of many community meetings that are hosted by our property in our community rooms that serve the broader community. But here you see a flavor of that.
Thank you for that. And then our next category that catalyzes we have is looking at transportation. And then Lisa has some questions from members who couldn't be here tonight that sort of tie into the transportation here, which is they specifically wanted to know, have you considered providing low-income transit passes to the residents? And then if you could more so just talk about the general sort of what transportation looks like at the site, if you like bike parking or connections to other modes of transit.
And remember everyone to please speak up a little bit so folks can hear.
Okay, let me know if you have any trouble hearing me. So we haven't delved too deep into transit passes, but the city actually brought this up to us as something they're encouraging us to do as well. So we will be investigating what transit pass options there might be and seeing if we can finance for that as well as a potential for our future residents. But we haven't made any decisions on that. And I'm glad you're bringing up that as well, so we know there's an interest. And then on the bike parking, yes, there will be bicycle parking at the site. And then how viable do you think this project is? So we do think it's viable. We have been doing about affordable housing development for over 50 years now, and we're familiar with the ever-changing climate and really ready to be flexible to adapt as we are seeing higher construction costs, interest rates, and there are those challenges. However, we are confident that we have the right tools under our belt and will be able to secure the necessary financing so that we can build these new affordable homes that are very much needed in the
Yeah, and what I can add to that is that Midpenn has a lot of experience doing transit passes. I know in the peninsula, um, I was involved in some of the early implementations of SamTrans passes. I think the name of the program has changed since I worked on it, but the ability to deliver passes, there is sort of some logistics, and also there has to be a certain level of commitment from the transit agency partners to ensure that they are uh, they adhere to those programs, and I know in San Mateo County there was a time when it was questionable whether the AC or SamTrans at the time would continue to support these, but I believe they have continued, and it's something that we would look into. Like Victoria said, while we like to consider and be open, and a lot of these benefits, there is cost associated with them, and as we try to streamline and put together our financing to move the projects forward, we have to make certain decisions at times, but I think this is definitely one that we can consider and look at.
And Lisa, if you want to ask some more questions here, and I should mention that anyone can sort of ask questions at this point. We're opening that up.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to respond to what was just said. I wanted to share that the person who asked the question about the transit passes, the reason she can't come tonight is because she's on the AC Transit Board of Directors and has a Board of Directors meeting. So if you're concerned that you might not get the right buy-in from AC Transit, we can definitely connect you to her, because I think, she's asking the question, she wants to see it happen.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, that would be great. And then if anyone else has questions related to transit or vibrancy or community, Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was thinking in particular that Fremont housing project, but more generally just housing projects, like similar to that going forward. I'm interested in what sort of like full-time job opportunities there are in those projects, and also like potential internship possibilities, because that really is an area where I think would be a good place for me to get some firsthand experience, and could be fairly stable employment, but there's still a lot I need to learn. So yeah.
Paul, do you know if the Bacon program is currently
Yeah, so one thing to consider is that there are NPH, which is in a more regional organization that advocates for affordable housing, does have in place um, internship programs to encourage folks like yourself who are maybe in college studying urban planning to get an entry into the affordable housing. And through that program, many affordable housing or nonprofit housing developers do engage and do participate in that program through that pool. There's another one, CCRH, which Victoria was actually an alumni from, and that's when she joined MidPenn. This was I think I don't remember exactly what the acronym stands for, but it's sort of kind of the rural housing approach. So Midpenn's been very engaged through the years in terms of bringing on board through these programs interns to join. We really encourage people to join the affordable housing industry. Beyond that, in terms of other employment opportunities, I would say there's clearly the economic generator of the construction. Once that starts, we will be using funding sources that will be utilizing prevailing wage, both state prevailing wage and federal Davis-Bacon wages. So these are going to be good paying jobs for construction workers once we start this work. When we hire for our permanent jobs on site for property management and resident services, we do advertise locally. We understand that the importance of that. So there are opportunities throughout the 5, 6, 7 years that it takes a project to go from its beginning through its completion to operations.
Thank you
Okay.
for diving into that. And then in chat, we have some questions here regarding the architectural renderings, if you want to bring those up again, specifically asking about the balconies and green space. So do some of the units have balconies? Are there no balconies? And then the green space sort of the project.
So there are currently no balconies for any of the units, and it's what Polo had mentioned. It is a cost containment strategy for us. Really realize no open space is more rather than the individual balconies, and it is major savings in the millions that allows us to build more homes and hopefully sooner too. The outdoor green space, I think the main gathering area will likely be on this podium courtyard on the third level. We have a landscape architect that will have landscaping in this area, as well as seating, and then potentially some play areas for children and barbecue area as well. So it will be flexible and also have some potential programming.
Yeah, and if I can add to what you said, Victoria, I think about the history. The last 14 years I've been at MidPenn and how our design guidelines have evolved over time. Our utmost sort of commitment is to high quality developments, right? We are not going to be turning this property over in 5 years to sell it off. We are affordable housing developers. We're a nonprofit. We intend to own this property in perpetuity. So our emphasis is really on providing the quality, using very durable materials. But when it comes to some of that private space, it does add significant cost. And over the years, the escalations have been incredible. We've had projects, and Victoria's managing one of them through construction, that due to cost reasons and continued competitions, and we've seen this on multiple projects because of the high costs, we are not able to be awarded certain funding sources, and therefore we have to wait another year to apply again. And projects might get delayed 2-3 years if you're not sharpening your pencils as well as you can. And each one of those years, your escalation in costs can go up 10-15% is what we've seen. So a project that cost $60 million at some point might cost you $80 million 2 years later because of the need to compete. So costs is a big concern, but at the same time, we're very thoughtful about making sure we provide other alternate amenities to our residents so that they can also enjoy space, if it's not private, open space, and through balconies, through courtyards and other aspects in the community.
Thanks for getting into that. And then Sadhana had a question as well.
Okay, so I have a few questions. This is a supportive housing development, right?
So not at this point. We're saying general families, so individuals, families, households. As Paul mentioned earlier, there could be potentially a supportive set aside, depending on the financing in the future.
So a certain percentage of the units, right? But you're right in terms of thinking of populations. If you think about sort of categories in affordable housing, historically, some projects are dedicated to seniors, 62 years and over. Some are for families, some are 100% supportive. What you're seeing more and more, because of the financing out there and because of the need, is to have a certain set aside. Maybe it's 20%, maybe it's 15, 20, 30% of the units are set aside for supportive housing. I wouldn't be surprised if this leads to that kind of approach as we look at the financing sources available, as we're more ready to apply for them. Right now, we're still getting through entitlements, and we anticipate later on this year and next year being at a point where we're really thinking about the target populations and the types of funding sources that could make this project move forward.
And I also know like this is like near the Irvington BART station. So like I know like it's pretty close to Irvington High School too. So do you know if like there's any like transit programs that will connect like the students there and drop them off at like school to like
Not at the moment. And again, one of the things we do have in our sort of as part of our umbrella is in-house resident services. So we do engage with school districts. Our resident services team, our service coordinators, and we will look at different ways of partnering with the school district, because we do anticipate that households in the property in the community will have youth at different grade levels that will need certain services. But specifically right now about services, again, it's a little bit early. We haven't considered that. Again, we appreciate the thought.
and also how many like parking units is set aside? Is it like mostly a transit oriented development, or like do you have a little bit of parking or
We will have some parking. So the first two levels will have parking. It's roughly 1-to-1 right now. We did hear from our property management that families will have cars, and knowing the specific location on Osgood Road, there is no street parking. There's no side streets where there could be any parking. So the city was also supportive of us providing some parking.
okay?
One thing I'll say to the prior point too, as we were discussing transit passes earlier, I do remember one of my first projects being on El Camino Road in San Mateo, and we did have a transit pass programs, and a lot of our youth were the biggest users of those transit passes because they utilize public transit to get to school. So while there might not be sort of a dedicated vehicle taking students, there could potentially be, through the use of transit passes, ways to advocate and facilitate some of that transportation to different locations, including schools.
All right. Thank you for that. And then from Catherine Ruby, we have a couple of questions. First one, what sort of lessons does this project take from the Stevenson Terrace project? If you can speak to that, or if you could speak to differences.
So I think the number of units does bring some differences to the size of the building. No, Stevenson is 4 stories, and here we're proposing 6 levels with 2 levels of parking, and I think Stevenson has surface parking. Part of the reason why there is that difference is to provide for the maximum number of homes. And then that courtyard too, instead of it having the courtyard and green open space at grade, we have more of that at the podium level.
Yeah, I would say it's 2 very different sites. Stevenson was done at a time and also with a site that allowed sort of a lower density. I can't recall if it's 2 or 3-story buildings that we have there. Whereas here it's a more dense project, and you see these a little bit more on more major corridors. I think of a very similar project we recently constructed in Oakland, in a location called Brooklyn Basin, which is very similar to the density, the number of units, the adjoining podiums. And
Could you explain what you mean by podium versus the at-grade sort of
good
building?
question. Right. So when you think of podium, think of the first 2 levels of the structure being 2 levels of concrete structure, which serve as the base for an additional 4 stories of wood frame buildings above. The 2 lower stories, concrete stories, the podium, tends to house a majority of the parking garage, but with wrapped around community rooms, common uses, maybe offices and some units. Whereas the upper levels, floors 3 to 6, might be more focused on maybe additional community rooms and units. So that's what I mean by podium. In terms of lessons learned, we are working with the same architect that designed Stevenson Terrace. And they help us navigate also the jurisdiction, the planning department, eventually building permits, and it is some of the same team members. And it is helpful to have teams that know the jurisdiction well. It helps you and sometimes expedite the process as you go through entitlements, permitting, and that's one of the reliance that we have with this architect, HCL, I believe it is, right, Victoria?
Yes, Herman Colliver, Locus Architects. I did see a question about whether there's a safe playground offer for children if balconies aren't feasible. And yes, at the 3rd level, which we've been calling the podium, but we'll say the 3rd level, which is surrounded by units, so it will have access only for residents. The children will have play areas. There will be play areas for different age of children. So there might be a play structure too for younger kids, and then more open space for teenage kids. And there will also be adjacency to like the community room and the laundry room. So if families are, doing their laundry, their kids can play outside. They will have visual for that too. So we have learned from the communities we've built in the past and been thoughtful about how to have spaces that really serve our needs.
Okay, and then maybe
sorry,
if you could bring.
there was a direct follow-up on that.
Yeah.
Yes, so this is exterior. I guess it's unclear when we're looking at the plans, but everything on that level where we're calling a courtyard on the 3rd floor, it's all exterior. So it's open to fresh air, and that you'll feel the breeze on your face. So it is exterior.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if you could bring up the plan again that shows the sort of interior courtyard or as well.
And if it helps, I can also share an image of a similar project that MedPen recently completed, maybe by sharing my screen, this Brooklyn Basin project that I think might shed some light with some aerial pictures. And I know Victoria and Ethan, you might be like, Polo, you always go to your Brooklyn Basin aerials, but I think people appreciate it. So tell me if you can see my screen right now. Can folks see my screen? Yeah. So let me navigate through. This is Brooklyn Basin in Oakland, Highway 880, just south of Jack London Square. And what you see here, this is a master developed community where the city of Oakland and MidPenn and the Housing Authority of Oakland partnered to build 465 affordable homes. What you see here in construction is just a component of the affordable pieces, but some of the buildings in the background are other market rate projects that the master developer built. But here you can see also it was a two-phase project, part of a big side parcel. It started all as dirt with roads around the perimeter. The project that you see in green is, again, very similar to what we're proposing in Osgood, which is a 6-story building with the first 2 stories being the podium concrete garage with 4 stories of wood frame building above. And you can see around the middle that you see some of the courtyards, which is what Victoria's talking about as playground areas with some landscaping. As I move through the evolution of this construction, on the second phase, we were starting to drive the piles. This was very close to the waterfront, and this was part of the stabilization of the structure. But you can see over time, the second phase started having more of the piles driven and some of the underground work. As that second phase started to come off the ground, you can see the second phase podium being built with some of the framing matching the original phase. Here you see further development of that, and eventually, I don't have a finish, but you can see in the middle is this open space that the community is able to use for playground areas, for community planters, and for playgrounds, things of that nature. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of a real image, aerial sense of what we're talking about. I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, that was a good demonstration of how the phasing of this project will look. And then also, I noticed the rooftop solar there, and to just talk a little bit about more about the sustainability measures of the project. You mentioned the rooftop solar on this one, and you also mentioned pursuing LEED or Green Point certification as well.
Yeah, we haven't decided yet, but we will work with a consultant to evaluate which program was most suitable for this project. We will have energy efficient appliances in the units and utilize low or no VOC paints, have recycling construction waste during construction, and some EV charging stations. We also will be preserving some of the existing trees on site, including some mature redwoods. So our architects are really excited for that.
Yeah, there's a lot of emphasis on sustainability on developments. Not only is building code, state code already presumes a lot of sustainability features being implemented, but some of our funding sources also provide certain advantages by higher scoring points, but by adhering to a certain certification. And it's pretty standard for us to either do Green Point rated or LEED certification. Oftentimes it's gold level or sometimes platinum. I believe that's might be some outdated terminology, but while photovoltaic is one of the more known features, there's many different features that go into a building for conservation purposes, whether it's plumbing fixtures that use less water, to lighting fixtures that use less electricity, water conservation measures, the types of materials that we use from recycled materials. Many things go into being LEED certified, and MidPen is very committed to the sustainability of the building, ensuring that you have the right air filtration, air quality for your residents. And I think somebody mentioned on the comments whether there'll be planters, community planters. It's been a fairly standard approach for us to do that in our communities, so residents can have a place where they can grow vegetables, grow plants, flowers. So I would imagine that, yeah, we would do that.
Wait, is this this like housing development pet friendly and like dog and cat, like dogs and cats? Or...
Yeah, that's a good question, and we sort of rely on our lease-up team and our property management. And I believe that there are there are allowances for pets, if I'm not mistaken, and I don't have the specific
Yeah,
details.
sometimes it depends on the funding too. And I think we have standard like breed and size restrictions.
Yeah, oftentimes we try to do a dog pet area, a place where people can go in and walk their dogs and have some outdoor space dedicated for that too.
Yeah, and then specifically about the green space and like the sustainability of like the what sort of plantings or like drought resistant plantings will you have inside the courtyard area? And then
Um,
also if you could, they have question, Sandra has a question about the preservation of the redwood trees on site as well.
so I don't know the specific plan, so that will be to be determined by our landscape architect to select what will thrive in this particular location. As for the redwood trees, they're actually not along Osgood. They're closer to the rear of the site, so adjacent to the BART tracks. If you look at an aerial, you might be able to see them. There are some on the site. And we did have an arborist go out there to look at the trees. So I don't remember the number of redwoods, but there are a handful there.
Interesting. And then does anyone else have sustainability related questions, maybe to the electrification of the project or any sort of other green features? Go ahead and feel free to ask those.
Will you have any like pollinating plants in your landscaping?
I think they had mentioned that they're not sure, but Victoria.
Yeah, we're not sure, but we'll definitely check
Yeah.
in with our landscape architect.
We're yeah, and I'll admit we're jack of all trades. We know a little bit about a lot of things. There's quite a handful of things you have to have some expertise here, but we rely a lot on our consultants and our designers, our architects, landscape consultants, engineers to navigate us through that. And the landscape is something that we rely on them. But I will say that it is important for us to use native plants, drought tolerant plants to that limit the use of water. We want to conserve water. We also want things that make sense in the setting where we're building. But while we're not sort of well versed off the top of our heads, I know our landscapes architects would be, and that would be sort of a high priority for them.
I have a quick question. Okay. Or do I have to type it in the chat?
No,
or do
you
I
can
just...
feel free to, you can go ahead and ask.
I'm also just curious about, sort of the financial sustainability after you get the buildings built and what sort of financing is there afterwards? I mean, I guess you'll be charging rent because this is for more of a workforce type of building.
Yeah. Right. So essentially, we model our projects. We call them performance. Not just for our sort of construction development budgets, but also our revenue, our income from our residents. And often when you do have project-based vouchers from a housing authority, which I believe Victoria was saying we intend to seek those in the coming years. It also provides additional subsidies, operating subsidies that enhances the rent on certain units. So just to give folks a sense, this is not specific to this project, but when we're talking about 30% to 60% of the area median income, looking at a typical family of four, that could be a family earning anywhere between, I was looking at this recently, maybe anywhere between like $17,000 a year to potentially close to $70,000 a year, right, for eligibility purposes. And that's just sort of rough numbers. On regular unsubsidized units, those rents for those families could range between, say, $400 for a one bedroom to maybe $1,700 for a three bedroom, which if you think about market rate on some of these properties, that's well below market rate. Now, once you start talking about subsidized Section 8 units, and maybe applying sort of rents to a supportive housing population, we understand that some of those households do not come close to being able to afford such rents. So we might have a household that pays $100, $200 a month in rent, which is 30% of the income they bring in. But a voucher through the housing authority will supplement that $200 with an additional $1,500 for that rent. That is able to generate enough income for the property to operate. We obviously want these properties to operate, to be able to sustain not just the operations and maintenance of the property, but also a long-term mortgage, because the way these projects are financed, these communities, there is long-term financing. It's not just financing from cities and counties, but it's also from conventional lenders, from a bank, who will give us a 30-year mortgage that needs to be serviced and paid. And we project our performance, we model our performance to ensure that the project can sustain those mortgages and those rents. So hopefully that answers a little bit of your question. Money that comes from cities, counties, and states tends to stay in with the project. Then we get conventional loans that we pay over time, and then we also get housing authority subsidies that helps enhance and supplement the rents, the income that we get.
And if you,
So the tax,
sorry.
oh,
No,
sorry,
go
no,
ahead.
I was just
Sorry.
gonna, oh. I was just gonna say that, so the tax credit, partnerships and whatever, those are just for the building of it, right? That nothing and none of that will support.
Yeah, if you think about, well, yes, think of tax credits as credits that are then sold to an investor that's buying these low-income housing tax credits and providing equity in return. So not to get into a tax credit 101 lesson here, but you might get a credit that you sell for 90 cents on the credit. And that might raise enough money that then you utilize both for your construction of the development and to pay off your construction loan. But yeah, I think tax credits in general are utilized during the construction phase.
And then if you could you talk a little bit about the affordability breakdown of the units, which units are allocated to what sort of affordability levels?
Yeah, I don't know if you wrote up that unit mix, Victoria.
I'll have to pull it up. But what we usually spread it out, so there will be units 30 to 60% area median income on each of the unit sizes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Because I think on the City of Fremont's website, they had a breakdown that was it was low income was around 82 units, and then moderate income was 46 units. If that's accurate still.
So I would say sort of the term moderate income in our industry is very specific. These units that we're building are all going to be considered low income. So 60% of the area medium income and below. I think once you start getting in, go ahead, Victoria. I believe that.
I know what he's referencing. It's part of our density bonus request. It's for the purposes only of the density bonus, we are restricting some of them for moderate income, which is 110% area median income. But ultimately, with our financing and layering, we are expected to serve all low, so all 60% area median income and below.
Thank you for explaining.
Sorry for the confusion for that one. That was a very technical document.
So, but you make a good point, and why you have to be really committed to this industry to bear with the complexities. But we'll apply for multiple funding sources, and we'll leverage different things out there, and each of them might come with a certain sort of level of sort of compliance or restrictions. Well, Victoria just talked about the density bonus. When we apply for city funding, there'll be another layer of restrictions on the units. State funding will have their own layer of restrictions. Tax credits will as well. They don't always match. And so we always aim to comply with the most restrictive. But I can assure people that, most restrictive here will always be sort of serving 60% and below. So it is a spectrum. 30% are considered extremely low income. And there might be some supported housing units, which would be even further. But the intent is to try to address the needs of a spectrum, a diverse population.
Okay. And then if you could, the last sort of category I'd want you to elaborate a little bit more on here was the intensity, the density of the project. You spoke to how like the goal was to maximize that with this project. So if you could just go into it a little bit more.
Yeah, and actually my answer was involving the state density bonus
Mhm.
law. It's what we're utilizing to allow for increase in density, and that's allow for 100% affordable housing projects. So we're utilizing that as a tool to maximize our density at this site. And that's in response to hearing that we need to see more affordable homes here. So we are planning to build the most units we can, and are able to finance.
And what I would also add to that is to fit within the context of the community and the neighborhood. If you look at some of the adjacent properties that have been built or are being built, that they're similar size, similar massing, similar density. So it does fit the context. But yeah, I think that was the goal of the city to try to uh, you know, not build something out of context. Not that would it be allowed to do something that's much taller, right? We felt like this is the 200 and what is it, 30 units roughly that we're proposing here. We feel sort of maximizes the density on the site while still staying within the context. To do a project with half the number of units, it would be underutilization of the site. And that's why these projects become more complex, because now we're having to phase it into multiple rounds of financing and applications, but with the intent of delivering to the city more housing to address the needs of the community.
All right. Thank you for that. Always good to see more housing and taller buildings. And then I think we'll do 3 more questions here before we continue on. So if anyone would like to speak up with their questions, or I can try to pick a few of them out of the chat here that are still present. Any final questions, though? Lisa asks if you'd be willing to share those slides, or do you have a website for the project or somewhere where folks can go see what the project might look
I
like?
can share a PDF of the slides. We don't have a website right now.
Mhm. Catherine asks about utilities on the project, if water is individually measured per unit.
Yeah, generally for our family apartments, we do sub-meter. So that gets recorded the usage, and I think there's a bill back system. So the tenants get billed for the usage at that particular unit.
Yeah, that question was already answered for me. Thank you.
Yeah, and I know there's but by passing on the cost of the water, hopefully it encourages our residents to conserve water. We all conserve when we are directly impacted. At the same time, some residents, could really use the assistance of having sort of the water be paid by the owner, the developer. We tend to sub-meter on family projects when we do senior projects because of the more limited income that we see with seniors. We tend to just absorb that through our operating costs, the utilization of water for the units.
I'll also add that there's something called we're getting technical, but there's something called a utility allowance. So if we are sub-metering, we are factoring that in, and the utility allowance amount that's set by usually the local housing authority gets reduced from the rent amount.
Right.
And then I believe there was a question from Catherine about the accessibility of the courtyard, or if she's able to speak to that.
Yeah, and we will provide access to our residents for the courtyard. I know sometimes the community rooms and exercise rooms and things like that might have limited hours. I'm not sure what community you're currently residing in right now, but we do anticipate that these amenities that we're building will be accessible to our future tenants.
Well, and beyond that, I think also in terms of sort of ADA accessibility, our building will be designed to be fully accessible. That's not only in the building code, but something we adhere to. So our architects, whether it's going from the garage through different sort of ramps, elevators, having likely we'll have multiple elevators at this building, wayfinding, signage, sort of a lot of our signage will have braille as well. We work with our architects to often what I see is different floors have different color schemes that for some it will be helpful to have that. So there's a lot of features, push buttons at the entry level to provide access to entry doors, fob systems. So there's a lot of ADA accessibility that goes into the common space to just navigate and circulate the buildings. But in our units ourselves too, 100% of the units will be what we call adaptable, which means they can be adapted with grab bars and with lower counter heights for residents. I believe, I don't know if it's 10 or 15% of the units will be fully built out, meaning that they will come with grab bars already installed in the showers and the restrooms and the adjustable cabinets. But the remaining units will be built with the ability to adapt them easily in case somebody moves into them and requests the need to have some of these features added. There's also
sorry to interrupt. Catherine added a couple of clarification notes in the chat, and it sounds like it's actually being able to access and utilize
accessibility. Okay. Sorry.
So meeting rooms, I know that sometimes we do have meeting rooms that are for staff. So it's possible that the meeting rooms that can't be accessed for residents are utilized by staff. But the community room itself, like the big room where everyone gathers, should be accessible or should allow resident access. And if there is like a fob or like a security measure that's locked, oftentimes our residents will have like a key that will be able to get them into that room.
All right, well, thank you for going into that. And then I'll touch on this one last question here, which was guest parking for the units. So the parking configuration you mentioned, but then what do the guest parking spaces look like? And then
I will say we will have very limited guest parking. We are going to try to fit what we can, maybe several stalls, knowing that there's limited street parking. But that there's probably not going to be a large number of guest spots, but there will be some.
And then we still have a number of questions that were unanswered, but to get to jotting down our feedback and whatnot, would you be okay if we included some of these questions maybe in an email to you later, and then we're able to share those?
Yeah, if you
Summarize some
send
of
us
these.
any additional questions in written format, we can respond after this meeting.
Okay. I've saved the chat, everybody, with all your great feedback and questions. So hopefully I'll be able to incorporate those as well as we go on. But yeah, thank you for all of that. And then if you guys from MidPenn have any sort of closing remarks on your project here, before we go ahead and move into discussing it on our end and jotting down our feedback. Just any last words on it?
Well, I'll start, and Victoria and others feel free to chime in. But very, very appreciative of this conversation here and these questions, and I we really value sort of or I would say share some of these values that you walked us through. It is something that we've over the years really integrated into our own like MidPen values and our design guidelines. Uh, we always need to balance and consider sort of what's feasible and what's not. But I think these conversations are always very, very useful. And I think through these conversations, hopefully we were able to answer and demonstrate that some of the things that we're implementing are in fact aligned with some of the maybe missions from Catalyst SV. But I really appreciate you all having us here.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
Yeah, I think Paulo said it really well, so I won't add too much. But I just wanted to share my appreciation for everyone's interest in not just our Osgood Road development, but affordable housing in general and being supporters of affordable housing. We all know how much is needed right now and really appreciate you being active members of the community and engaging with us.
Yeah, thanks everyone for giving us a chance to present. It was nice being with you all this evening.
Yeah. And then from here, I think we'll move into our sort of closed discussion of the project and jotting down some info. And Alex, I think we are online, so do you want to facilitate the moving to offline? And then MidPenn, Victoria, Polo, and Ethan, thank you for being here. And if you said your piece, then I think you're good to go and maybe grab some dinner.
Thanks, Jake. Really appreciate it.
We'll
Take
leave
care,
you.
everyone.
Have a good
Thank
evening.
you. Take care.